industry's reaction to what the Prime Minister said today. Joining us now is Mr. Pawan Goenka of Mahindra & Mahindra. Mr. Goenka, appreciate you joining us here on cnbc TV 18. Well, you know, cnbc TV 18 had reported that the FAME 2 policy would not be unveiled by the Prime Minister at the Mobility Summit, and that is exactly what's happened. I know that there was a great degree of expectation within corporate India that this policy would be unveiled today. Given that, is there a sense of disappointment, and also, is there a sense of growing anxiety, sir, because there seems to be confusion on what shape and form or even size FAME 2 will finally take? If I look at the comments that have come in from Mr. Gadkari today saying that, look, we give you a 12% GST rate on electric vehicles and that's incentive enough. There's also reports suggesting that maybe the subsidy will now be linked to batteries and the size of batteries. Is there growing anxiety now, sir, on the confusion that seems to persist?
Well, first of all, I was not surprised that there was no announcement today, since I talked to you earlier in the week and you had told me that. So I was not expecting any announcement. Having said that, yes, the anxiety does remain now because I do not know why the announcement didn't happen today. There are various views that exist on FAME subsidy in various quarters. And our calculation from what we know, based on many pilots that we have done on four-wheelers at least, my belief is that as of today, as of the cost that we have today, without FAME subsidy, it will be very difficult for three-wheeler and four-wheeler electrification to happen. There is clearly a viability gap, and while we can do pilots, even with the viability gap, but we cannot ramp up unless we are able to recover at least the cost that we have for making the vehicle. And therefore, I hope that there is no rethinking on FAME subsidy. That's what was earlier talked about, that all vehicles, two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler buses, will be supported, but for public transport and not for personal use, which is fine. I mean, it's fine to put focus on public transport. Yes. But even for public transport, without FAME subsidy, my view is that it's going to be very difficult right now.
Okay. What is the viability gap, sir? Because
and I would definitely hope that whatever the decision is,
that it is announced swiftly. I do understand that industry is hoping that there is a quick decision on this, but what is the viability gap? Because as you pointed out, you believe that a ramping up is not possible without subsidy for at least 3 years. The hope is at least 5 years, but you will go with 3. What is the viability gap today, sir?
Well, the way our calculations are, and everybody will have different set of numbers, but our calculations based on the pilots that we have done, if you were to compare cost per kilometer for the electric vehicle today to a cost per kilometer of an IC engine vehicle, there is a gap of approximately 5,000 rupees per month. Okay. Now, our view is that 5,000 rupees per month can be made up by 4 factors. The first one is FAME subsidy. The second one is the OEMs able to reduce the price by approximately 10%. Okay. Which can happen if the volumes start going up. And third is the charging infrastructure being available, part of the FAME subsidy, so that the cost of charging becomes reasonable. If we do these 3 things, I'm pretty sure that the 5,000 rupees per month can be sort of made up for. And that's when the takeoff will happen. Takeoff will not happen till that number becomes 0 or slightly positive. Okay. Because customers will not pay more for using electric vehicles.
Sir, you know, you talked about the 3 critical components to be able to bring down costs at the consumer's level when it comes to electric vehicle. I want to talk to you about charging infrastructure, sir. Mr. Gadkari also suggesting that in 2 years, charging infrastructure will change completely in the country. Given the offtake today, do you really feel confident about that? Because, you know, while you do have the government trying to put a plan in place without private sector participation and significant public spending, do you really believe we're going to be able to solve the infrastructure challenge?
Well, we have to take it in small bite-sized pieces. If we try and make a plan where everything is covered by electric vehicle, that won't happen. My belief, firm belief, is that we should take 6 or 7 big cities and focus on intra-city public electrification of vehicles. And if you do intra-city public electrification in the 6 or 7 metros, the cost of setting up infrastructure for charging is not very high. Okay. I don't have a number with me right now, but the cost is not very high. And again, obviously, it depends on who you talk to. The Bharat charging protocol that we have cost approximately 2 lakh rupees per charging station. And if we have 1,000 charging stations, let's say in a city like Delhi, that will cost only about 200 crores.
Yeah.
So you can probably put enough charging stations in Delhi for the cost of 200 crores. And that's what we're looking at. Now, while the announcement is not made today, but what is very clear from what the Prime Minister said, and that's the important thing of MOVE, that he is fully committed to electric vehicles.
Yes.
And obviously his vision is going beyond electric vehicle to look at how do we move India. And that really is the key word on how do we move India.
Yeah.
And when I talk to the officials who are here in Vigyan Bhavan, I don't think anybody is kind of taking not announcement of Farm Aid 2 today with any kind of concern. It's just a matter of time, and I think the decisions that have been made, I'm pretty confident that there will not be too much of change from there. And therefore, as far as I can make out, there's no rethinking.
Okay.
There's no rethinking of Farm Aid, and government is fully behind it.
Okay.
And I think they want to support and ensure that what they do is the right thing to do and enough to do for electrification in the country.
Let me ask you, sir, we have this aspirational target of moving towards 30% of electric vehicle penetration. And perhaps, if we were to combine that with other alternate fuels by 2030, so change the mix by 2030 of what we have on India's roads. Given the fact that the industry is going to see another big transition in the form of BS6 emission norms, you've, of course, got to also comply with the CAFE norms. How much of a cost impact is it going to be for industry over the next few years?
How much of what impact, sorry?
A cost impact, sir. A cost
How much
impact. Cost impact.
Cost impact. So there are three different things that you talked about. One is electrification. Electrification clearly is not something which is going to be a heavy investment. It's really electric vehicle from OEM viewpoint is not very heavy investment. The major investment is in cells, and cells for some time, 2 or 3 or 4 years in India will be imported and perhaps not locally made. When it comes to BS6, we have talked about the investment which is already plugged in, approximately for a company like Mahindra, about 1,000 crores investment. Again, that is an investment not very large because that's like developing one model, one new model of the car. The third one is on fuel efficiency, and again there are lots of incremental things that we will have to do, but not a huge investment. But what it will do is not so much about investment, but it's about cost. And for a consumer, with the cost that we will be incurring, and none of this is unjustified, so I'm not complaining.
Sure.
All I'm saying is that the cost for the consumer will go up. With the emission norms coming in, depending on who you talk to, for diesel vehicles at least, of the order of 80,000 to 1 lakh rupees at the ex-showroom price. For safety norms that have just come in for new vehicles and will come in for the old vehicle, probably 30,000 rupees to the consumer. And if you have to improve fuel efficiency and therefore do a lot of light weighting, which we will have to do for fuel efficiency, that will add another cost. So our vehicles will probably become a lot more expensive, lot better, lot cleaner, lot safer, lot more fuel efficient, but a lot more expensive also. And I do not know if that will change the balance or that will have an impact on the growth of the industry. But I would tend to think that consumers will probably get a shock once, and maybe for a quarter, for 4 months, 5 months after BS6 comes in, there will be a slowdown, as we have been saying. But after that, I think it will stabilize. It has happened in every country. It has happened in every country, as Europe has gone to BS6, as US has gone to higher emission norms. That has not really slowed down growth beyond a short period of 2 or 3 months.